Melbourne band Fight the Sun hit the scene in 2018 with their debut EP. Adrian, who's the vocalist and guitarist from the power trio from Melbourne, joins us here at the Rock House today. Adrian, how's things going, mate?
I'm great, mate. How are you?
Yeah, going well. Mate, the band itself, the power trio, it's really bringing the classic rock to today's stages. What were your early inspirations, mate? Were your early listening tunes entrenched in the classic rock scene, mate?
A bit of everything. So, I mean, I guess, growing up in kind of the 90s was kind of my teenage years. So it was a lot of what was around then, your Nirvanas and Soundgardens and Alice in Chains, all those, which I guess is probably considered classic rock now. So, it's a lot of that sort of stuff. And then sort of, as you kind of do, you kind of go back. So I sort of went back and started listening to lots of, AC/DC and Iron Maiden and all those sorts of things. You find your way back to like even like the Beatles and lots of, so so it was all sorts of different things. Like between the three of us, like if you asked us, the three of us, to name our top 5 favorite bands, it'd be 15 different bands. There'd be no sort of crossover at all. So
yeah. Adrian, what are your top 5 then?
Oh, don't ask me that now.
You threw it out there for me, mate.
I know. Look, it's probably the Beatles. It'd be AC/DC. I sort of, if I could sort of really think hard about it, and I don't have to think too hard about it, it was really AC/DC that sort of, growing up, being Australian, obviously, and having sort of older relatives, cousins, and things like that. They sort of introduced me to all that Australian rock. So Angus is the reason why I play guitar in the first place. So, but so it'd be Beatles, AC/DC. I don't know. It gets hard from there. It gets really, really hard from there.
It does.
I'll give you a different answer on a different day, like every day that you ask me. So
I would say it could be glam rock if I've had a bit of glam rock on earlier in the day. Have to go back to AC/DC. Though, right? AC/DC and the Beatles really had a great influence on a lot of people around the world.
Oh, look, the music would be very different. I think the whole shape of rock and roll would be very different without them. So
most definitely. So Fight the Sun, how did you guys get together?
Started, it's about 2015. 2015, 2016. Very, when I say different lineup, I'm technically the only original member. Myself and another friend, a really old friend of mine who I'd sort of grown up with for many years, and he was a drummer, and we sort of started the band together. But he left after about a year or so. He decided he just didn't want to do music anymore, which is fair enough. And then our bass player Roan, we'd actually met several years earlier when he was trying out for another band that I was in.
Okay.
So we happened to run into each other. We just happened to be out somewhere, and we bumped into each other and was like, "Hey, that's you." And it's like, "Yeah, okay." And so we got talking, and I said, "We're looking for a bass player at the moment." So he joined, and then Jamie, who was the original drummer, the guy who I mentioned before, he decided he wanted to move on, like I said. And then Roan knew Mars, our drummer, and said, "Hey, I'll give this guy a call." And Mars was only ever meant to be a bit of a fill-in, until we found a permanent replacement. But 4 or 5 years later, he's still filling in. So, but yeah. Anyway, it's pretty simple like that. Unfortunately, nothing too exciting. It was just pretty much just a random meeting of someone who I'd known previously. So
completely off track, mate. Iron Maiden poster in the background, I see. So Iron Maiden's got to be in your top 5.
Yeah, it does. There's a few things here. I've got the Who up there, and there's an AC/DC and Star Wars, and a few different things. So yeah.
Mate, love Star Wars myself. We won't go off track because we're here talking about in 2018, your debut EP hit the charts as well. How did the EP come around?
we'd sort of demoed a lot of songs, we've written a lot of songs, and we happened to bump into Tom Larkin of Shehead, and he'd been running a recording studio in Melbourne for a number of years, and had been producing a lot of bands and things like that. And yeah, we just we met up with him, and he came in and listened to what we had and liked what we were doing. So we sort of workshopped the songs a little bit more, and then we sort of settled down in his studio and spent about a week in there just knocking out a bunch of songs, 4 of which appeared on the EP. It's really as simple as that, and it was great. It was really good to sort of get him involved, and he's fantastic. Obviously, with his own band, we all know them, and that's a band that would actually probably make my top 5 on most days. So anyway, like it was really great though, because he had a different perspective on songs and writing songs than what we had, and it really kind of opened our eyes to a different way of working. It was a really good really good learning experience. Even if off the back of it nothing had ever happened, it was a really good learning experience. So as much as anything else.
I'm true, working with him then.
Sorry, so at the end you cut out.
It must have been like a dream come true for you then, recording with him.
Oh, a little bit, yeah. No, he's and he's such a really nice, down to earth sort of guy, and which made it really easy. And through that, his engineer in the studio at the time, John Grace, he's the one who actually produced our most recent batch of songs. So we sort of kept that connection there. Tom's moved on he sort of moved out of producing. He's really concentrating on band management and things like that. So in the last couple of years, so John, is who we work with what we've released recently. So yeah.
Nice. So the debut EP itself, it really comes across as being heavily influenced by that 90s sound, which, you grew up with us. The EP itself, Animals, Goodbye Gravity, The Other Side, and Unknown. What was the feeling like once the, EP hit the rock charts here in Australia?
Yeah, it was great. It's really good to sort of get out there and we just get a really lot of good positive feedback around it. I mean, the reality is, we didn't become some sort of overnight sensation or something like that, but we did build a small but loyal following, which was really nice. It was really good, and we did a lot of shows on the back of that, especially through 2018. A lot of just up and down the East Coast. Unfortunately, we never made it to your side of the country, but we will one day. It was a really good experience. It ended up being cut short a little bit. Unfortunately, there was a bit of some tragic circumstances that sort of cut it short. But yeah, it was really good. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. We all know what happened at the end of 2019, and Melbourne being the most lockdown city in the world, basically. How did you keep the band alive and kicking?
It was really interesting. It kind of, in a weird way, it kind of worked in our favour, because we kind of had to be a little bit creative about what we were going to do. And look, for most of 2019, we really didn't do anything. It was a few sort of aborted attempts to sort of keep things going. So admittedly, there was a moment there when it might have happened again. But yeah, and then coincidentally, the pandemic hit in the early 2020. We're starting to get the ball rolling again. Which was a challenge, but it actually made us sort of think a bit more creatively about how we're going to work. And we've never been the most technologically advanced savvy people. So we just started, at home. We all got ourselves our own little sort of home studios, set them all up, and we just started passing ideas around. Like we literally just, through the magic of Dropbox, and just sort of sent each other ideas. So we spent most of 2020 just doing that, basically. I reckon there was probably 60, 70 different song ideas floating around. So we had a lot of time. So couldn't really do much else. So aside from go to work or whatever, and some of us were working from home anyway. So
Yeah.
So yeah, and so that was pretty much 2020. Through all of that, we sort of kept in contact with John. And there was a couple of aborted attempts to sort of get into a rehearsal or even do some pre-production, and it started to happen at the start of 2021. And so yeah, by July last year, July 2021, we actually finally got into a studio. And the funny thing is, it was just this is the start of July, and literally a week later, after we finished, we went back into
lockdown.
The big lockdown. So we just by absolute pure chance, we locked in those dates because we had to book a couple of months in advance. John's a busy guy, obviously, and so are we. So it was just pure luck that it probably got recorded at all last year. So
yeah. Well, it did work. The process that you undertook, because in that year, 2021, Mistakes, your first single since the EP come out, and looking at some of the lyrics in there, Make Mistakes Again, mate, this could have been my theme song, or could still be my theme song today.
It's my daily theme song. It's like, yeah.
The sound is a lot different to the EP. Was that a conscious decision by the band to change that sound?
Yeah, I think so. I think we just, it had been 3 years. So in that time, you kind of, your ideas change, and you sort of, I'd like to think that we sort of grew as people and grew as musicians and things like that. So it definitely was. I think it's really weird. It's still different to how I imagined it would be. And I guess that's the thing of working in a band with 3 other people. And that's not a bad thing. I'm not criticizing it at all, but yeah, it's still my original idea of it, and how it actually turned out is still a little bit different, but that's great. It's fantastic,
Yeah. You mentioned that you had at this point 60 or 70 songs. Are you still looking at those with a view of a future release?
Yeah, some of them still exist in some form or another, but I look with anything. I don't know if you're a musician or if you write songs or anything like that, but yeah, you write 60 or 70 songs, but believe me, probably if you're lucky, 10 of them are actually worth anyone other than you actually hearing. So it's just, and that's one of the things we learned from Tom. Actually, was just write, and it's one of these things. The more you do it, it's like practicing anything. It's like getting good at anything, whether it be a musical instrument or whatever. You're training to be a professional athlete or something. Like the more you practice, the more and the vast majority of what you write, you listen back to it 6 months later, a year later, and you go, "What the hell? That's terrible." I'm glad I'm the only. I'm glad all us 3, the only 3 that actually heard some of these ideas. It's embarrassing, but yeah.
There you go, mate. It all becomes much easier, as you're right. For any young musician out there, keep practicing, keep doing these things, because it does come out naturally.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, mate. 2022 has been quite big for you. It started off with the release of 2 singles, Carnival and Friends Are Enemies, as well. We'll get to the latest single, Carnival and Friends Are Enemies. Fantastic videos on those as well.
Yeah, it was fun. The Friends Are Enemies one was really fun. It was good to sort of, it was good to hit someone with a baseball bat. That was fun. And not actually hurt them. I was actually worried about hurting him, even though it was like a plastic, it wasn't a real a baseball bat. It was just like the guy who was directing it was still going, don't worry, just hit him. And it's like, it's still pretty hard. I'm still going to hurt the guy. So yeah, look, I'll give it away. If you really, really slow it right down and have a good look, I'm not actually really hitting him, because I was just so concerned about the poor guy's, Mitch, who's the guy who got his head bashed in with a baseball bat. I just didn't want to hurt the poor guy. He's such a nice guy. It's just like, I can't hurt this guy, So it was a lot of fun.
The actors in the film clip were actually friends or family, were they?
They pretty much all are. One of them is Rowan's girlfriend. Another one is a really old friend of mine. It was just, and the young there's a kid at the start. If you saw that
Yep.
kid, he's the son of one of the guys at the table as well. So yeah, but that's how you do it when you're not a hugely successful, financially successful band. You just got to rope in all your friends and your.
Yeah, that's right.
You know.
They're claiming royalties at the end of each year, then, mate.
Yeah, I got an APRA royalty the other day for like $8, I think it was, or something like that. So yeah, I bought a coffee with it, a coffee and a ham and cheese toasty from Macca's, I think. But, yeah,
Lovely. Couldn't get any better meal than that, mate. Your latest single come out early November, Stranger's Fiction. Another classic sounding rock song.
Yeah.
How did the writing process for this one go?
Yeah, well, that was of the 5 that we recorded. 4 have been released so far, but of the 5, that was the one that probably turned out the most different to how I imagined it. It was actually meant to be, it was originally, I should say, a lot more sort of more punk and a lot more sort of heavy, and it still is. I mean, there is still pretty heavy guitars and whatever in it, but yeah, it was definitely turned out a little bit different to how I originally saw it. But it was a little bit more interesting now, I think, than it originally was. I think it was the original idea for it was a little bit more, rock by numbers, if you want to, you know what I mean? It was a little bit too, okay, this sounds like everything else. So I think, I'd like to think anyway, it sounds a little bit more interesting now than what it originally was. So.
You mentioned you recorded 5. We've seen 4 of those singles. Is the 5th one coming out very soon?
Yeah, it would be probably, what is it, December, start of December now. It'll be February next year. Yeah.
World exclusives for the Rock House here, mate.
Yeah, and we've actually started recording a few new things as well. We've not with John this time. John's a busy man, so we're working with Matt Robbins at Colour Sound Studio for a couple of songs. So he has his own band actually called Cicada Stone, who are really great. So we've already started recording and started working on some new things for next year.
So what's the view there? Are you going to continue on releasing singles, or are you working towards a full-length album?
So this will be with the 5 songs that we did with, in this current batch. That'll drop as an EP. Yeah. And then look, to be honest with you, in this day and age, unless you're a really well-established, well-known band, I just don't. It's almost pointless, unfortunately, to release an album.
Yeah.
I think it's just, you just release singles, release songs. People's attention spans aren't what they used to be, and I understand that. I'm the same. I think we've all been kind of, to some degree, our attention spans have changed and shifted, and yeah, so it keeps people focused on one song at a time. Because if you have a look, I mean, if you, I hate to, Spotify, the evil Spotify that we all love and hate in equal measures. If you jump into any band's page or release an album, you have a look at the plays next to, and it starts off track 1, it's got the most, and by the time it gets to track 9 or 10, it's got the least. And it's just like, well, those could be really great songs. Track 8, 9, and 10 could be great songs, but they're just disappearing into the void because people are just hearing the first 2 or 3 songs, and that's it. So
it is crazy. Even my musical tastes or listening styles have changed from listening to a full album in the 80s to putting everything on shuffle through my phone.
Yeah, I'm 100% exactly the same now. I've got lots of vinyl records and lots of CDs I've bought over the years, and I don't even have I actually do have a CD player still, but it's not connected or anything. It's in a cupboard somewhere. So
Yeah. I'm one of these latest fanatics that have gone out and brought a vinyl turntable again, mate. And I've gone back to listen to full albums, which is fantastic.
I did that. Yeah, I've done that as well in the last couple of years, and it's great. It's a good experience just to sort of sit down. I've got a little bean bag set up, and I sit on the bean bag in front of the turntable, and with the cover, the album cover, and
Yeah. But there was art there as well. You could look at the album cover for hours, right?
Yeah, you could. Yeah, it was awesome. Yeah.
Just going back onto your comment about established bands, and them recording albums. Even those established bands are going and releasing singles more so than albums as well.
Yeah. Well, I think, I think it doesn't matter who you are. And I think, look, let's say, for example, pull their name out of the hat. I don't know, Foo Fighters,
Yeah.
They can afford to release albums, and they can afford to have they can afford to do that. They're in a position they can spend months in the studio. They've got their own studio, so that they can, which funnily enough they don't really use. But they've got all the money in the world, so they've got and good on them, good luck to them. But they can afford to release albums. They can afford to have filler songs or whatever you want to call it, or songs that no one really listens to down at the tail end of the album. But when you're in our position and bands similar, we don't have the budget at this stage anyway to go in and do 10, 11, 12 songs, not in one go at least. We could probably do it over the stretch of a year or something. But
yeah, definitely. So there's a couple of new tracks coming out in the new year. What follows that for Fight the Sun? Are we going to see you back on the road?
Yeah. So we've done a few shows here and there this year. It hasn't been a lot, to be honest with you, and that's a little bit by choice, to be honest with you. We're kind of just, again, going back to the fact that we're not in this, we're not the Foo Fighters. People aren't going out in droves seeing us. Like I said, we've got a small but loyal following, and that relates to gigs as well. You know what I mean? We don't, full honesty here, I'm not going to, it's no smoke and mirrors. We don't always pull hundreds of people to every gig that we play. So that's the reality for, as you probably know, for 99.9% of bands. It's just it's a matter of just being a little bit more, I don't know, we're trying to we think anyway, we're being smart about it. We could be completely wrong. And about just sort of getting a bit of a vibe, I guess, around what we're doing now, and releasing some songs, again, people familiar with us before we start to sort of do more shows. You know what I mean? I mean, nice. I think, the vast majority of people don't go out and see bands anymore just for the hell of it, as a form of entertainment. They want to know what they're hearing before they go out. Because we're spoiled for choice. We don't have to leave the house. We've got all this amazing entertainment around us. And so I guess the point I'm getting to is we're trying to sort of build a bit of a following that way first before we start to ramp up the gigs.
No, very, very good advice. Adrian, one final question before we go. You've seen a lot in the music industry. For any new musician starting out, what's the best bit of advice you can give them?
Just, it sounds very cliche, I know, but just follow what you want to do and do what makes you happy. I mean, I spent a lot of my younger years, late teens and early 20s, doing that typical desperate musician thing and just jump, well, what's the big thing of the moment? I'll join this band and, this is the big band at the moment, let's try this sound. And you just chase your tail. You end up chasing your tail. And if you really think about it, you think of all the bands, all the acts that have really been, have made an impact, whether it be just influence or success or whatever, they're their own unique thing. All the bands that we've mentioned have their own unique style and unique sound, and they just did what they wanted to do. There's small compromises along the way, I'm sure they all had to make in some areas, but they just stick to what you love and do what makes you happy. You know what I mean? But at the end of your life, when you look back, be like, whether you've been successful or not, you'll be, at least I enjoyed myself. I had a good time doing it.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, what you are doing is absolutely fantastic. The EP, the singles that you have released, they are available on all streaming platforms, but also go check out the website, which is fightthesun.com / help me out here, AOK. Did I get that right?
No, it's just fightthesun.com. Yeah. I think you're talking about the EPK. That's a secret link. You're not meant to mention that. No. That's our EPK. Yeah. I'm joking. Sorry. It's okay. It's okay.
That will be edited. Go to fightthesun.com.
Go to fightthesun.com. Yeah. It's all good. It doesn't matter.
we talk about mistakes. I make
Yeah.
mistakes. Oh dear, on that word, I think I'll get out of here and go find somewhere else. Adrian, it's been an absolute pleasure. Best of luck with the band. I do hope to see you guys over here. Otherwise, I'll come down in Melbourne when I'm over there.
Please let us know. Yeah, we'd love to say, catch up and have a beer or something. Yeah, it'd be great.
Yeah. Sounds good. Thanks, Adrian. Take care, man.
Cheers, mate. You too. See you, mate. Bye.